Well, good evening. This is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on the 9th of December, and I want to thank all of you for joining me this evening. And our first story up is price of groceries set to rise. So this is the average Canadian family will pay about $400 for groceries more, and $150 more for dining out next year, an annual food price report predicts. Food prices will rise between 1.5 and 3.5% in 2019. However, vegetables will see the biggest price jumps between 4 and 6% for the category according to the report. Now this is because of basically unpredictable weather in the farming industry. Everywhere where we have large-scale farming now is either going through flooding, droughts, inclement weather, early frosts, early snows, late frosts, all of this kind of stuff, unexpected hail events. This is happening throughout the world in some of our biggest growing regions, especially in Europe. Europe is going through climate chaos right now, and if they can't grow food for themselves, you know what, they're going to be knocking on other people's doors to try and get that food, and that will drive the price up. And when you start factoring in the carbon taxes that are now starting to come into play, you can add on probably another 4 to 6% on that, because every delivery driver, every person who drives to work on the farm equipment used to harvest this stuff, their input costs are going to increase dramatically. And of course there will be a more pressure on wages, because the people working for these people will also have to cover those extra expenses. You know, how are you going to deal with potentially a 12% increase in your grocery bill? And they say that meat is going to stay about the same or drop slightly. I don't think so, because most of your meat is corn-fed, grain-fed. Well, where is that food coming from? And then you put into the mix the whole ethanol, corn ethanol thing, and you have got a disaster waiting to unfold. And which is why I am promoting and continue to promote putting in your own little victory garden, just to supplement, just so you can help out, especially with some of those greens. They're pretty easy to grow. Get a package of seeds, sow them, tend them, and you too can have a small but productive vegetable garden. Next story. Chief not a believer in PM. And I picked the story of Grassy Narrows because when I first came to Canada in 1979, this story was just starting to unfold. So 1979, and we're going into 2019, that is 40 years later. 40 years later, and we're still discussing a community battling mercury poisoning, waiting on promises. Ottawa, an Ontario First Nation suffering from generations of mercury poisoning, still needs a treatment centre and help for children harmed by the toxic metal, its chief said Wednesday. Until Grassy Narrows gets aid, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has promised. Its chief, Rudy Turtle, said he won't think much of Trudeau's commitment to the reconciliation. Trudeau told an assembly of First Nations chiefs Tuesday that his Liberal government will start from a place of partnership with Indigenous people, recognising their rights without being dragged to it by the courts, and seeking to make that precedent for all future Canadian governments. When I hear him say that, first of all, I'm not really a believer, Turtle told a news conference on Parliament Hill. If he is serious about having a legacy, then it is time he meet with Grassy Narrows, and he meet with the chief and council, that he meet with our people, that he stand in front of our people and talk to our people. The local river was doused with waste mercury from an upstream chemical plant for years in the 1960s and 70s, contaminating the water, that the fish that live in it, and the people who consumed both. The symptoms of mercury poisoning include impaired peripheral vision, muscle weakness, impaired speech, hearing and cognitive functions, and numbness or stinging pain in the extremities and the mouth. So I can fully understand why he doesn't trust the word of the Prime Minister, this one or any of the previous Prime Ministers for the last 40 years. It's just unbelievable that we're still at the point of committee on this particular issue, and it just shows how much government can put things off to one side, how long they can drag their feet, and it just shows the absolute disrespect for the Indigenous people of Canada. Surely, in the 21st century, they deserve to have clean drinking water, clean fish coming from that water, and decent living standards. I don't know, I just shake my head. We can sure flip off $50 million, as Justin Trudeau did the other day, to some fund or another. $50 million. How many water treatment plants could you build for $50 million? A couple at least. And he just flipped that off like it was just nothing. Off you go, $50 million, just like that. And speaking of Monsieur Trudeau, and here he is. What about Trudeau's white male privilege? And I always find it interesting that these people who are proponents of social justice, of white male privilege, of saying that every white person is the problem of everything. Take a look at this picture. Take a close look at the people in the background. Okay, these are the embodiment of privilege, because there are a few other nationalities in there, mostly white, I can see, but all of these people are the embodiment of privilege. They all had educations that most people cannot obtain. They come from backgrounds and families that could finance them through this education and allow them to take time off after their education to enter politics. You know, running for office is expensive. Even running for local council here, I went through around about $2,000. Now, I mean, that doesn't seem like a huge amount of money, but when you start getting up to the provincial level and the federal level of entering politics, you are probably looking, you better have $25,000, $26,000 tucked away minimum, just to get you started. So this is not peanuts, and it really makes this whole process an exclusive affair. And as long as we have first past the post system, it will favour this 2 or 3 party system, and we will continue to have this flipping backwards and forwards from majority left to majority right, and each time we do that we seem to get the worst of both sides. So yes, I think we need proportional representation, and let's get ourselves some minority governments who are forced to at least meaningfully consult the people and recognize when they really don't want something to happen. You know, most people, most everyday people, they don't ask a lot, but they do want some security, and that is what the government offers in return for taxation. But now we are losing that financial security because there are far too many hands out for reaching out for not enough money. And you have a aging population. The baby boomer retirement is peaking right now. We're just at the peak or starting to fall off. I'm in the last wave of the baby boomers, and most of these people are highly dependent on their pensions. And to see reckless or irresponsible spending is heartbreaking and absolutely horrifying to the average senior Canadian and middle-aged Canadian. I think actually what we're seeing now is people struggling all around to make ends meet, and as we were talking about with food prices increasing, wow, fuel prices increasing, this is going to be a real hit on the economy, a real hit on the economy. Okay, last story. Migrants to be marooned. Okay, this is an interesting story, and I'll tell you why it's interesting is because it's from Copenhagen. A pro-government lawmaker acknowledged Tuesday that the Danish plans to banish rejected asylum seekers or those with a criminal record to a remote island may breach international law, but added that his party doesn't mind challenging international conventions. Martin Henriksen of the anti-immigration Danish People's Party, which supports Denmark's centre-right government, told the Associated Press that the government's move is a signal to the world that Denmark is not attractive for migrants. The isolated island of Lindholm was until this summer a laboratory facility for the State Veterinary Institute researching contagious animal diseases. From 1926 until earlier this year, cattle and pigs suspected of having contagious diseases were brought to the island, some 80 kilometres south of Copenhagen, to be tested. The plan adopted Friday by the government and the Danish People's Party, that between them hold a majority in Parliament, is to decontaminate the uninhabited island by late 2019 and open facilities for some 100 people in 2021. The facilities would house migrants who've been denied asylum but can't be deported, and those with criminal records. Human rights activists have denounced the decision, calling it degrading and inhumane. Well, it's not like they're putting them to death. I'm sure that, knowing the Danes, the facilities on this island will be absolutely first class, and the person who may be writing this, it doesn't have to give a name of the author, just as Associated Press. But if it comes from a Canadian reporter, they might want to go down to the Lindsay Super Jail just down the road here, where there are about 200 or 300 refugee claimants who have been kept in a cell for the last 2.5 years awaiting a hearing, a refugee hearing. I don't know about you, I think if I was awaiting a hearing, I'd want to be walking around on an island, free to go where I please, a decent accommodation, and there's going to be food put out there. The Danes are so humane, and I think this is reasonable. There are facilities there, obviously. There's power there, obviously, and so people can be maintained and lead a somewhat normal life. Have you seen some of these tent cities? They are rape gang central. Okay, sprawling tent cities for migrants. There is no protection, no sanitation. No, I think it's a controversial thing because of the way it sounds. But when you flesh it out, when you sort of unpack it a little bit, I think you really can see why would a country allow somebody in with a criminal record. I wouldn't want to see people coming into Canada with a criminal record. Certainly not one for violent crime or terrorism, for example. I mean, that's I don't think we need those kind of people in our country. Anyway, this is an interesting and controversial idea, and we will of course have to wait and see how it plays out, but I'm sure that there will be some more reports coming out from the Humane Society about this particular issue. Okay, well, that's about it for this evening, this weekend, and please, if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe below, and we'll be talking to you real soon. And once again, thank you so much for being a part of this channel, and please, of course, always leave a comment as you see fit, and we will talk real soon. Take care. This is Hound Dog Steve signing off. See you now. Bye.